What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another exciting episode of Political Frenemies. I'm Chris Newton. I'm a historian and a former Tory defence policy advisor. Before I introduce our returning guest, I suppose I better say hello to my co-host, Lib Dem activist and former councillor, Mathew Hulbert. Hello, Mathew. How are you doing?
I'm good. Where is your festive cheer, Chris? Come on. Do better.
Well, you know, it's going to take me some time, I think, before we get into the festive cheer. I'm afraid, especially with this Labour government and it ruining the country and everything. So,
we'll get into the politics in a second. But just before you introduce the guest, can I point out that I do now have some festivities? I've got my Christmas tree here, and then I don't know if you can see over this shoulder, but there's little Santa. So there you go.
Yeah. We're starting to fill in the festive spirit now. My backdrop. Now you can't see this when we're on the split screen, but when my screen is full, when it shows my screen, you can see a little crappy tinsel Christmas tree on my bookshelf there. So that's my contribution to Christmas. Christmas.
He's such a Scrooge. He really is such a Scrooge.
Well, I'm the Conservative, so I'm all about sort of saving and hoarding money and all of that. So, you know.
Absolutely. I think we should introduce our returning guest.
Yeah. Our returning guest, I think this is his third time now on the podcast. That's an achievement in itself, really, isn't it? But it's our occasional Green contributor, Green activist, Daniel Laycock. Hello, Daniel. How are you doing?
Hello, Chris. Hello, Matthew. I'm very well, thank you. How are you both?
We're good. Now you were. Yeah. I'm just going to I like letting our audience into things from behind the scenes. You were just having a good-hearted. So I just want to stress that. But you were just having a good-hearted moan at us because you'd not been on since October.
I know. Since Green Party conference is the last time I was on. So I was in a really small room as well then. This time I'm actually at home, so it's quite fine. I've got no festivities around me at all. It looks completely bare. So I am in a festive kind of mood. I will be on the 24th of December when it's Christmas Eve. So, but yeah, that's the last time I was on. So it's good to be back. It's great to be here talking to you both to discuss all the political movements that's been happening over the last 7 days. So yeah, it's good to be here.
Well, and by the way, can I just point out that when he was having a whinge, he wasn't having a whinge at you, Chris, because he knows that I do the booking. So really, he was just having a whinge at me.
Yeah,
that's fair enough. That's fair enough. Yeah.
but
I do it all the time.
But
so,
we don't want to spoil the surprise, but I think Daniel will have reason to be pleased with us. We'll announce it at the end of the programme. So keep watching.
Yeah. So that's a reason to stay in the end. So yeah, we do have a big announcement at the end of the show. But before we get on to the week's political events, I think we better catch up with Daniel. And there's been dramatic developments with the Greens. You know, the Greens exploding in popularity. We have another Find Out Now poll putting the Greens in sort of second place in terms of votes. So you must, this is an obvious question, but you must be pleased with how things are going and with Zach Polanski's leadership.
Pleased, shocked, surprised, and bewildered, I think, the 4 words I would use this evening. I think mainly, if you kind of look at what's been happening since Zach was elected in September, our popularity, as you said, Chris, that has exploded. We've seen a huge amount of new members. And because of those new members, we've now got an income of £4 million coming in. So we've seen a huge injection of cash into the party that we've never seen. So I think what we're kind of noticing as well, especially from the Find Out Now poll yesterday that came out, so we're obviously joint second with the Conservatives. We've been above them, we've been below them. So I think we're quite stable where we are in the polls. YouGov have got us around 16, 17% as well. So we're kind of seeing that that consistency take place. Zach's been on media appearances, so has Rachel Mothin, our deputy leaders as well, and it's been absolutely busy, I would say. I know Zach is completely booked out all the way to February next year. So we know that there is appetite out there from a lot of voters across the country, and obviously we'll come on to other things around the Greens later on. But I think we're excited, especially with the local elections in less than 6 months' time. Things could definitely change dramatically across the country. What that could look like is hard to predict, and I'm not going to make a prediction. Not this early on. I may do next year, but we'll obviously have to wait and see. But I think the party as a whole is really on a really positive step forward. We've been around for we're now hitting over 52 and a half years, so it's our 53rd anniversary next year. So we're making strides in ways we've never seen before. So yeah, a lot of people in the party are really, really happy still.
So let me just push back on you a little bit, Daniel. So a couple of things. So one. And you can talk about the specifics if you want, or you can just talk in the generality. That, yeah, I mean, as I've said before, and obviously I know Zach of old, and I know that he's a very charismatic individual. Says what he thinks, but at least once that's got him in a wee bit of trouble. So I mean, I guess the question is, does he have to watch that, or should he just be his absolute authentic self? And what happens is what happens. So that's one question. And then the second one is, yeah, you've seen this explosion in membership, which is fantastic for the Greens. It's not yet really showing, though, in terms of actual election victories, in terms of council by-elections. We've not really yet seen it. It's still, we've seen examples just this week that. The parties that are hoovering up the council by-election wins are Reform, certainly, and, albeit to a lesser extent, the Lib Dems. And so, as I've written before on social media, getting the clicks, getting the popularity, that's all great. Getting the new members, that's all fantastic. Not necessarily showing through in actual election victories.
So, yeah, no, I see your point on that. I think one aspect... Let's take the first question first around should he be his authentic self, because politicians do get themselves into trouble with what they say. And I think there has been obviously, he was on a podcast, which I won't mention, competition and all that, obviously where he was talking to Alistair Campbell and I completely forgot his name. Roy Stewart, that was it. I didn't forget his name. It was in there somewhere.
It's very forgettable. Anyway.
What one? Alistair Campbell or Roy Stewart? Or both?
Yeah.
Exactly.
We don't mention them here.
No, exactly. That's why I didn't mention the name of the podcast. I was very clever there, you see. Other podcasts are available, particularly this one, all the time. Little plug there. So I would say politicians always have to be careful what they say. However, I think because we are trying to do something very different, Zach is trying to be himself and to be more authentic. And that's what I think people are attaching themselves to, that they are going, actually, this is someone really different we've never had before. And I think they are really connecting with that. However, there are times that I think for myself, even like as a former politician myself, as a former councillor, I'm quite careful what I say because I don't want to, one, get myself into trouble, or two, the party, because obviously there's legalities behind stuff too, so we have to be cautious of that. But we have to look at other parties, how they use certain issues for themselves. So I think what we need to do is definitely do politics differently. We have to work together collaboratively in ways that we haven't really done before. We may have done over the past 30 years, where you've got the Conservatives and the Labour as the two bigger parties, but now that's completely changed. We're living in completely different political times. And I think from our point of view is that they're more positive political times, because we are gaining that traction that we've wanted to for some time. If you look at like 2 years ago, we were polling like 6%. Now we're doubling that within 12, 18 months. So things are changing in a different way. It's how we then communicate that and get more people involved and get more people active within the party, joining the party as well. I won't plug to join the party too much, I promise. You can do it for the others if you want. I don't mind. But I think to the other point as well, looking at around election wins, I do see your point, Matthew, around how the Lib Dems have done a lot of... Over this year alone, I think the Lib Dems have gained around about 50 seats. Greens have got 14. It's not mean that we're not winning seats, which is being quite either specific on where we're targeting, where we can win seats, because obviously there's a lot of competition in politics nowadays trying to win those council seats, and these are by-elections as well. So let's look at what happens in 2026 with the local and some of the mayoralties that will happen. Some won't now, and we'll see what happens for that. I think talking about the by-elections as well, and if you look at polling, I think a few weeks ago we won 2 seats. A few weeks before that we won the entirety of the by-election set. There were only 2 seats up anyway. So we do win seats, but obviously as we now grow, as we become a bigger party, we have to change our infrastructure. We have to get our activists out there on the doors, delivering leaflets, and that's where we do win elections like every other party does. So we're going to have to upscale fast because we've got a general election in 2029, maybe earlier. We'll see what happens with especially Labour. We'll talk about that polling from Find Out Now. Labour are fourth Labour. 18 months ago, they were polling in the 30, 35% and even up to 40%. Now that's completely disappeared. So I think there's now apathy against Labour, and it is swinging towards, I think it was mentioned today in an article in the Times, which we may talk about later, that those membership numbers are swinging towards Reform and the Greens. So there's a huge shift that we've never seen in this kind of scale before in politics. So it's going to be an interesting time. But again, I think looking at by-elections, it comes in waves. One party does well, other parties don't. It's just one of those things. It's the political landscape and it's the political boots on the ground as well. So let's see what happens over the next 6 months.
Okay, right. I won't preempt too much our announcement, but there will be scope to discuss the Greens in
Don't say too much,
in more depth. No, but
don't give it all away.
Yeah.
Want people to keep watching or listening.
Yeah. I'll just say that, but yeah, an extraordinary few months for the Greens and just in British politics in general, and that's going to be the theme of at least one of our discussion points this week. And what we'll be discussing is firstly the EU UK Customs Union vote in the in House of Commons this week, where the Lib Dems actually put forward a 10-minute rule bill on whether we should have some kind of customs arrangement with the EU. Then we'll look at the new list of political peers that was announced this week. Then, sort of breaking today, we're recording on the Friday, Reform UK has overtaken Labour to be the largest party in terms of membership. So we'll look at what implications that will have. And lastly, we'll take a look at a couple of the end-of-year interviews in the political magazines. So that's the agenda for today. Let's get on with it, shall we? So our first item is about the vote that took place this week. And actually this week, very rarely, we are doing an item which is largely driven by the Liberal Democrats. I mean, that's just extraordinary, isn't it, really? I mean, that hardly happens. And Mathew can no longer say now in future that I'm not generous to the Liberal Democrats because I'm giving them first billing in this episode this week. So I'm a very kind-hearted man, and I'm being especially generous for Christmas time. But
being especially
anyway,
festive, Chris, aren't you?
Yeah. So Santa's come early. But this week, MPs voted in favour of a Lib Dem 10-minute rule bill proposing a UK EU customs union. 100 MPs voted in favour, while 100 voted against the bill. Deputy Speaker Caroline Noakes casted the deciding vote. 13 Labour backbenchers voted in favour of the bill, while Labour's official position is to oppose such a customs union. Some ministers, David Lammy, Wes Streeting and Rachel Reeves, have signalled potential openness to it. The bill will go to second reading on the 16th of January. So this bill has passed. There's still going to be discussion about it, and of course the whole business with Brexit continues to rumble on. It's been like nearly coming up to the 10th anniversary of Brexit, and we're still sort of discussing it, and the government still, and Liberal Democrats are still kind of unpicking parts of it. So I mean, obviously this is a victory for the Lib Dems. It was a Lib Dem 10-minute rule bill. I mean, surely Mathew, you should move on, and let's accept the vote, and that's the Lib Dems, in order to have any kind of momentum about it, especially with the green surge which we've discussed. Surely it should move on to issues that the public actually cares about.
Our voters do care about this issue, and our members certainly care about it. And this was a 10-minute motion put forward by Al Pinkerton, who is our Europe spokesperson. Look, let's just be honest about it. If Labour had really wanted to, do some kind of three-line whip on it, it could have defeated it. It chose not to do that, and so the numbers were what they were: 100 for and 100 against. And as is tradition, the Deputy Speaker, as you mentioned there, Caroline Noakes, voted to allow further debate. And so, that was absolutely a victory for the Lib Dems. We don't have all that many these days in terms of, we have council by-election victories, but in terms of kind of national victories like that in Parliament, obviously it doesn't happen very often these days. So the party made a big thing of it this week, and why not? I don't blame them at all. And I think our voters, certainly our members, would have been happy about that. And we're not going to stop being quiet on the effects of Brexit. And I know that the likes of you, Chris, always say, "Oh, you've not accepted the result." We accepted the result. That doesn't mean that politics didn't stop. Politics in terms of Europe didn't stop on the day that we voted to leave the European Union. I know you wished it had, Chris, but it didn't. We continue to debate the issue, and as I've said countless times on countless outlets, from my point of view, and I know you disagree, Dr. Chris, but from my point of view, I think that it's been an unmitigated disaster, and it's had terrible effects for the economy. And so, of course, we'll continue to say our point of view on this. And I would certainly say, and Daniel may argue with this point, but I would certainly say that the Lib Dems remain the most pro-European party in the House of Commons. And so if we don't make this argument, then who will? Now, I mean, do I expect this bill to end up as law? No, I don't. But do I think this was an important victory for us in making our case and living up to our values as pro-European liberals? Yeah, I absolutely do.
You said that you accepted it, but your party campaigned to revoke it before it was even implemented.
No, Chris. Now, Chris, don't tell little fibbies. Don't tell. It's Christmas time. Don't tell little fibbies. What we said was that we accepted the result. The result was the result. But what we said was that after all the kind of palaver and chaos of the Theresa May years of trying to get this thing sorted out, when she went to an election on trying to get a majority to do so and then lost her majority, let's not forget about that, was that we said that after all this chaos, it should go back to the people for a confirmatory vote. That was what we said, which isn't quite the same. You see, Chris. Dr. Chris seems to think that democracy on that particular subject should have ended on that day, never to be spoken of again. Some of us who are actual Democrats feel that democracy is a rolling thing where people's views change. And I think we've seen in the polls that...
But usually when you have a vote, you implement it and then you decide whether it's working or not. The Lib Dems wanted to do it before it was actually implemented. But anyway, we should bring in Daniel here. So your reaction to this, and where do the, where do the Greens fit in here?
Where should I start on this? So I think first of all, we're actually, I'd say, better than the Lib Dems on our kind of stance around Brexit and the customs union. Yes, I know they brought it in with the vote, but it only won by one vote, and that was from the deputy speaker anyway. And our Green MPs voted for it. So, and we've always been very consistent ever since 2016. I was even part of the kind of the really bad gang, as we're now kind of called, to kind of have another referendum, because I voted Leave in 2016, but I changed my mind. So if I can change my mind, I did.
Oh my goodness!
You not know that, Matthew?
Why did you do that?
I know. I do. Because I was an idiot. There you go. that's not a politician's answer. That's just me being really truthful. I was a complete moron for doing that.
Now you can admit that too, Chris. Come on, Dr. Chris. Come on. I know you wanted. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on. Now you can admit it. Now Daniel has. Come on.
I totally. I mean, the behaviour of the EU ever since the vote, or even before the vote, but especially ever since the vote, the way in which it treated us ever since, I'm more than ever vindicated in what I voted for. So, as far as I'm concerned,
I mean, honestly,
isn't this supposed to be the season of like goodwill and good mankind or something? No, apparently not even to the EU for Chris.
But didn't there were a few notable figures in the Greens that voted Leave, wasn't it? Wasn't it Baroness Jones? Didn't she?
Yeah, Jenny Jones did.
I don't know if she is notable or infamous or something else.
Well, she was in the Lords at that time anyway. But back to the point. We've been very consistent around customs union about rejoining it anyway, and we've even taken it further. I think a few years ago we actually had a policy at conference that stated we'll rejoin the EU at the right time anyway, and that's not just saying we're going to join like next year.
Sorry, policy too.
It absolutely
is. Trust me. It absolutely is.
You don't really talk about it much. I don't hear about it much, so I don't really believe it. I've annoyed him now. But let's look at the reality as well. Since leaving the EU, there's been a lot of trade loss because of that. There's been a lot of investment loss because of that as well. So we have to look at it from a reality point of view. So if businesses struggle because we've left the EU, then isn't it really time to kind of start thinking differently about having that relationship with them more closely, so we're able to trade more easily with them? Because I was involved with the Remain Now campaign of those who voted Leave but changed their mind. So, and we were part of those kind of marches through London demanding and calling for another referendum to say, is this what we want? Because it is about, and we can all probably agree and disagree about whether we want Labour to be in government or not. I think the majority of us right here will say, no, we don't. So do we want another general election? Yeah, we do. But it's then down to the Prime Minister to decide that. So it's about what we all want and how we can make the country better. So if that is rejoining the Customs Union, then so be it.
Yeah, I mean, the difference with a referendum is that it is generally understood that referendums are once in a generation, and that you have to give whatever you voted for time, whether it's devolution or whether it's leaving the EU or whatever, because it's such a momentous decision. You should give it time. I mean, it was 40 years since the last vote on EEC membership. So surely we've only really officially left the single market for 4 or 5 years. So surely we should. And I just don't agree on the investment point, because we've had lots of investments as well. But surely we need to give it time. Like we gave EU membership 40 years.
But Chris,
Chris,
did the likes of Bill Cash and John Redwood and assorted others stop banging on about the need to leave the EU in those 40 years? I mean, did they?
No. But we still gave it 40 years, didn't we? We still gave it 40 years, and yes. But my problem is with the with the Rejoin crowd is that they want a referendums kind of instantly now, and not give it time for us to properly assess the effects of the decision.
You think it's suddenly going to get better, do you, Chris? You think it's suddenly going to turn into a jam for everyone, do you?
Well, let's look at it. I mean, we've barely kind of left the regulatory orbit of the EU, and in fact, Starmer wants us to pull us back more into the regulatory orbit of the EU. So have we really properly left? I mean,
this is their excuse. We've not properly left.
If we had a government in 2029, I won't say which government which shade of blue it will be, but if we had a government in 2029 that actually takes full advantages, actually deregulates and makes the most out of the Brexit freedoms, then I think things will be different. But the fact of the matter is we've had government after government that has been effectively either not taken advantage or actively tried to sabotage it.
Hang on a sec, Chris. So if you're saying, regardless of what government it is, we've had a Conservative government who couldn't deliver it. We've had a Labour government who we don't even know where they stand on anything anymore. But then if we had a Reform government, would they really even implement it? I don't think they would, because they say one thing 1 minute and change their mind the next. So I wouldn't trust them with a barge pole. So really, I think ultimately,
No, I was just going to add to that point, Daniel, which you're quite right. But I was going to add, as I've said on LBC and elsewhere, and I think I've said it on this podcast before, but I think it bears repeating. What is the one word that doesn't pass Nigel Farage's lips anymore? Brexit. He really hardly ever, there he was, Mr. Brexit, Mr. Independence Day. He never mentions it now. Why does he never mention it? Because he knows that the majority in this country think that it's been a bad thing for Britain.
Well, it's been implemented. So the people who've been implementing it hasn't, have been actively sabotaging it. But I'm pretty sure that in the run up to the election, Farage will be saying that we are going to deregulate. We're going to look at the EU regulations that we're still subjected to, and we're going to renegotiate a new deal with the EU. And I'm sure Farage will say Brexit plenty in the run up to 2029.
Well, I mean, I want to come to Mr. Farage a little bit later on the pod, so let's not say too much about him now. But look, I think in terms of Lib Dems and our voters, and certainly our members, this was a rare moment of sweet victory this week. So I think we should be allowed to enjoy it. And I thank all those who joined our MPs and voted for it, including the Greens, including some Labour people, and whoever else voted for it as well. As I say, I mean, do I expect it to become law? No, I don't. But do I think that this was something important? Parliament having its say this week, then yes, I do. And as you say, Chris, we this is the first time in an age where we've led on an item of Lib Dem initiative. So more of this I want to see.
That's true, but Labour has completely overshadowed it as well with what Rachel Reeves, David Lammy last week has been saying about it. And it's interesting that Labour's sort of leaving the door open to eventually doing it. But as other Labour ministers have said, well, Labour's just signed like big trade deals with the United States and India and so forth. So where would that leave that? You'd have to rip those other trade deals up. So the practicalities of it is, I don't see how it's going to work.
Well, can I just quickly say, it's no more of a practicality. It's no more of a problem than ending 40 odd years of being in the EU, Chris. And you were happy to do that. So let's not have some hypocrisy here.
Yeah, but that's 40 years. But we would be ripping up trade deals that we've signed like last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, but how do we know we'll be ripping those up? How do we know we'll be ripping those up with the US, even though I don't think we should even have one with the US right now with Trump, for Christ's sakes. So I think we've got to look at the realistic positivity that being back in the customs union will massively help trade across EU countries to us too, because currently there's so much red tape, which apparently we wanted to get rid of, but now we've got more of. So it really isn't a clear cut as people think it is, really.
So let's move on to the House of Lords now. And the new list of political peers was unveiled during the past week. Labour announced 25 Labour peers, which led to accusations that Starmer is stuffing the Lords with his cronies. The Tories and the Lib Dems also announced new peers, just a handful, well, not even a handful, really, but Reform UK was prevented from nominating any, because Starmer ultimately has ultimate power on which party sort of nominates and so forth. So the question is, or the two questions is do we agree that Starmer's basically trying to rebalance the Lords here, and his stuffing the Lords with his cronies, and does that? What's your position on sort of Lords reform in general? Because I don't think we've ever debated this on the podcast before. So a exciting new topic. Daniel, let's go with Daniel first.
Yeah, so I think we could all be in agreement for once, which is going to be quite bizarre after our last topic we were talking about around the EU. Because I think with these new peerages that have been obviously appointed by Keir Starmer, those 25 the new Labour peers, I think what we're kind of now seeing is a huge influx of massively Labour supporters who will vote with the government in the Lords, so they can obviously pass legislation no matter what that is, no matter if we like it or we don't, or if it's good for the country or if it's terrible for the country, it will still happen. And I think what we're now seeing is kind of wrath of let's move and make things a lot more easier for us in the Lords and for the government, instead of actually making it better for the country. So I would we'll probably all agree on this, that we definitely need major reform in the Lords. We definitely need an elected chamber, and we need to reduce the size of that, and that is fundamental. I would probably even go as far to say that we need to have a proportional representation in the House of Lords to ensure that people are elected in the balance of what the country is and their people's backgrounds, their work life, their lifestyle. So I think, who was it said it? I think Jenny Jones, who's a Green in the House of Lords, has said that she's trying to get herself fired. And Greens have been consistently trying to get themselves fired to have an elected chamber, in a second chamber, and to have a voting system that's better for that chamber as well. So I think she also mentioned, and I completely agree with her, that it's now going to be 850 members sitting in that chamber. 850. That's 200 more plus what they've got in the House of Commons. So it's 200 more members that are going to get paid at a daily allowance, a weekly allowance and a monthly allowance to sit in there to make legislation. Yes, it's a big role. Yes, it's a lot of work, but we need people that we need a chamber that represents the country, not just, I think there's a lot of business people in there as well. You've got Lord Sugar in the House of Lords. I don't know if he's still in there, he may be. But we've got to have a representation that's properly voted for via an election. We can do exactly the same time as they do in Australia. Well, I think they do a third in Australia, a third of their second house they do every 2 years, and they have a general election every 4 years as well. So there are methods out there that we can use to make it better, because currently it's not fit for purpose.
Okay. Mathew, I assume you agree with all of that. But before I tell you what I think, and it's quite complicated, so I won't go into that. But let me put an opposing argument about kind of having appointees in there, in the business people, as Daniel said. Having some of these business people, sort of experts, like ex-service chiefs, academics and so forth, they bring expertise to the UK legislature that is invaluable. That really informs the process. What do you think of that argument? Is that convincing or?
Well, I mean, no, it's not. I will just say that I know a number of obviously Lib Dem members of the House of Lords who work very hard, who do a full day's work, who speak, who contribute to committees, who are part of APVGs, who do a proper day's work in the House of Lords, and I think especially of my friend Baroness Liz Barker and my friend Lord Mike Story, who do really good jobs of work in the Lords. Now, that's great, and that's as it should be. But I'm afraid we all know, we hear the stories of some in the Lords who, if what's been reported in the past is true, sign in the front door, take their 300 odd quid allowance and go out the back door. And I think we need to have some kind of mechanism. Whilst we have the Lords as it is, we need to have some kind of mechanism, which means you only get that money if you can show that you've been there all day and you've done a job of work, because it's not just a retirement home for people. They are legislators. They are members of our, might not be MPs, but they are members of our parliament, and they need to be seen to be doing a full day's work. So that's point one. Point two is that there's no justification in 2025 for having half of a legislature that have 0 votes to their name for their current roles. I know many of them are former MPs. Okay, fine, but I always used to famously say that when I had my my seat on Barwell Parish Council here in Leicestershire, I can't remember the exact figure now, but I got 200 some odd votes for that to be on Barwell Parish Council. I was proud of every single one of them. But I always used to say that's 200 more votes than the whole of the half of our legislature, and that cannot be right in any kind of self-respecting democracy. And so I think we either need to reform the Lords in the way that Daniel suggests, or we need to abolish it and just have the one chamber. Now, I wouldn't be in favour of that latter one. I think a revising chamber is a good thing, but it has to be an elected one. Now, people will then say to me, well, won't you then get a clash, Matthew, between the Commons and the Lords over who has the mandate? But I think there are ways around that. Other countries have situations where the election to the second chamber is for a much longer period of time, and so because then the main chamber, the Commons, or I don't want to call it the junior chamber. You know what I mean, though, don't you? Because they get elected more often, they then can say that they have the more recent popular mandate. So there's ways around it. I'm not saying that any is perfect, but there's absolutely ways around it that other countries manage. And look, I mean, there's been some controversy that I'm surprised you haven't raised this, Chris, so I'll raise it. There's been some controversy this week around the fact that, some alleged, I noticed the Tories were alleging that the Lib Dems had been bought off, in quotes for those listening, with the 5 peerages to end up voting for the workers' rights legislation, which we had some, not that we don't believe in workers' rights, because we clearly do, but we had some issues with the legislation. Now, I don't know how true that is. It seemed to be a Tory attack line and an attack line by the Tory supporting press, but how much of that is true, I don't know. All I can tell you both is that there were some raised eyebrows amongst Lib Dem members about some of those that Ed Davey has decided to put in the Lords. I won't say any more than that, but a lot of chatter amongst Lib Dem members about some of those that are now going to be in the Lords representing our party. So yes, we'll see how that works out. But as Daniel quite rightly says, I mean, I think I'm right in saying that the Lords is now only second to I think it's the Chinese Parliament, is it, in terms of numbers? And I mean that's just absolutely farcical. I do get the point that with an appointed chamber, you are able to put in there people who have sets of specific skills and experience. I do get that, and I'm sure that is of value. But we also know that it's a place where failed politicians are often sent to kind of have a second career. Well, we're not a retirement home for the politically abysmal. the second half of our parliament needs to. People need to be there based on merit as much as is humanly possible. So I go back to my point. It either needs to reform or it needs to die.
Yeah. Although on that point, I think you, if you have elected changer, you will have like party apparatchiks.
But there's ways around. Yeah, but there's ways around that as well potentially. I mean, I just think this needs. I just think this needs some serious thinking about. And people don't just need to say, "Oh no, it'd just be another Commons." It wouldn't if we dealt with it properly.
I do think that the Lords do actually do a lot of work in terms of really scrutinising what the Commons puts to them. That it gets sent to them, it gets sent back. So there is that scrutiny part to it, because you can't really do that as much. Yes, you've got committees in the House of Commons that MPs attend, etc., and you've got select committees. But on the legislation front, the House of Lords is that place where things can get scrutinised, removed, put in, add-ins, whatever that is, so it can get work done to ensure things are better, or they improve, or they're far enhanced to what people would like to see in law, so it makes lives better. But I think the critical part to this is that what we need to ensure is that continues regardless, because I think others can say, "Oh, look at them jeering in the House of Commons. It doesn't really look great, etc." Others may seem that this is entertaining, etc. The US does; they love it. But what I think we need to kind of see is a functionality parliament that works for the country, not sometimes always around party politics, because it doesn't help. This is about, okay, how can we collectively come together to ensure we make things better for everyone?
But Daniel, Daniel, let me ask you. Let me just put a point to you. Don't you think that the Greens would have much more of a moral stance on and to a certain extent, this is true of my lot as well, but Liberals have been in the Lords for a very long time. But don't you think the Greens especially would have much more of a leg to stand on this if it hadn't accepted places in the Lords?
So, good point. I can see where you're coming from. I know Scottish Greens wouldn't want that. They obviously wouldn't send anyone to the House of Lords. But I think from our standpoint, it means that at least we have someone scrutinising, bringing accountability to the government. Yes, you've got others to do that, but it still means we can do that as well. Because if we didn't have anyone in the House of Lords, we couldn't scrutinise stuff anyway. So I think that's a really important kind of part to this. And it also means that we're actually then understanding not just what legislation's coming through, but how we can make it better. How we can make it in terms of whether that's from a social perspective, whether it's from an environmental perspective, we're there making that case. And I think that's a really critical part.
And can I just say, I mean, I won't say anything about Jenny Jones, but Natalie Bennett, I really like, and after she ceased being Green Party leader, I debated with her up at an event here in Leicester, and we joked after that it was much more of an agreement than a debate, because we just basically agreed on everything. And I
sounds familiar like this podcast sometimes, doesn't it?
I just think she, and I follow her contributions in the Lords with great interest. So I certainly think, in terms of her perspective, that again, she's someone, and I'm sure this is true of Jenny Jones as well, that they do a day of work in the Lords, and again, I think that's important. But I just wonder, from the Greens' perspective, as kind of a radical party, whether it just lessens your argument a bit, the fact that you do have seats in the Lords.
No, I wouldn't say that, because as I think the first part that I mentioned was around that Jenny Jones is trying to get herself, and so is Natalie Bennett. They're trying to change it from within. Right. Sometimes you can't always change it from the outside, as that saying goes, which I won't say it. Always do into the tent instead of out, because it just doesn't work. So it's that sentiment. I was very careful how I put that as well. So I think it is about changing it from within, and it is. And I think Jenny has done this about twice now. She's done it. She's put a motion forward in the House of Lords to say we need to have an elected chamber, because it may and reduce the amount of lords and baronesses and cross peers within the chamber, to make it more balanced, because it is completely not the case at all. And I think that's a really critical part to
Right.
this is that if we don't have an elected chamber, we are still going to continuously millions of pounds spent on people's expenses and their allowances. And that's 850, you have to remember. 850 times that 300, times that by 5 days a week, times that by at least probably 45 weeks in a year. That is millions of pounds.
It is.
So we have to make it more balanced this
I
way.
agree. Just to say, the Greens do something quite interesting, don't they? Which I must admit, I'd quite like to see in the Lib Dems, which at least adds a semblance of some kind of democracy to the process, which is that you elect the people that, you know, when your party is given an opportunity to have a peer, you've conducted an election for who you want to go in there. No, that doesn't change the fact that it's not directly elected and all the rest of it. But I think that's an interesting way of deciding who goes into the Lords.
Yeah, it's not down to like a leader of the party or the prime minister. It is down to us, the members, and we decide who that is going to be. I think that actually makes us. I would say I think we're the only party that does that in the country. I don't think any other. Plaid Cymru may do that. I'm not 100% sure. I'll have to go and look that up and do some research, would you please, for a change. But I think we are potentially the only part in the country that actually elects their potential members of the second chamber until we get it all fired.
And just to add my sort of 2 pennies worth in is that I do think that the current situation is unsustainable, the current system of patronage, but I would urge extreme caution about the design of an elected Senate, partly because of the things that you've raised. For example, the potential of a contest, between the Senate and the Commons. That's why I wouldn't go with PR for the elected chamber. But yeah. So I think again, like if you conduct any change as the true conservative that I am, you've got to really think through it, and I'm not quite sure whether kind of the ideas out there kind of properly addresses the situation. I still want the Commons to be supreme, but I'd also bring in the law lords as well. That's the only unelected elements that I would have. Because I think the Supreme Court has not done wonders for the judiciary or the perception of the judiciary, but that's another point. But shall I move on to the next item?
Just a quick one there, Chris. So, if you wanted a second chamber, would you want it to be elected?
Yeah, I think you'd have to. Yeah, I mean, you can't really bring hereditaries back, can you?
Oh no, I think we can agree we shouldn't really have hereditaries anyway, and it should be done in a better.
Although with hereditaries, at least there's no argument about who should be there and who shouldn't be there, which we don't get with the current system. But I think, I would sort of agree with an elected chamber, but we have to be very careful about it and how it fits into the system. So that's my view. And I'm kind of open. I'm open to be persuaded on, whether whether the current system can work or not, or whatever. But I just don't see the current system, the system of patronage, to be sustainable. And the size, as you say, is ridiculous of the House of Lords.
Yeah.
Okay, right. So let's move very quickly. I think we can skate over these quite so quickly because we are doing something next week, which we'll reveal at the end. But very very quickly, big news on the day of recording. Reform UK has overtaken Labour in terms of membership, making it now the largest party in Britain in terms of membership. So Reform now has 268,000 members. And Labour, so this is due to reports that Labour has now dropped below 250,000. So Reform is in the lead now. And also another development is that Reform won its first council by-election in Scotland as well, which again is another breakthrough for them. So reaction to this. I mean, what does this say about the state of politics and the fact that Reform now is becoming sort of very, very popular? Who'd like to respond to that?
Shall I start on that? So I mean, they are clearly still having a moment, and and it's a moment that's lasting. I would just add though that there's some signs in the polls that it's not consistently going up for them now. That they might just have plateaued a bit, at least for the moment. But talking about real elections earlier on, they won I think 3 seats just last night. Should just point out that the Lib Dems won 2, and that goes against the point that it's Reform and the Lib Dems that are tending to be winning council seats across the country when these elections are held. But yeah, I mean, clearly Reform are cutting through with a lot of people. It saddens me greatly. It pains my heart, but it's a political reality. And yeah, I mean, clearly a lot of people, certainly a lot of people on the political right, but I think a lot of people, I don't want to say across the spectrum, but certainly people who just feel disenfranchised with the other parties are turning to them. Now, I mean, I think it's just interesting though to see can they turn all of this momentum that they've most certainly got into a proper situation where they can realistically enter government and actually know what they're doing. Were they to get there? I still think that's a much more open question. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty much all going their way at the moment. Except, can I point out that they're still having their travails at the councils that they run. They've had another week of I won't go into the details, but a council leader having to go because of alleged things they'd said on social media and all sorts of other things. So certainly in terms of the councils that they quote in quotes run, it's not going especially well for them, I would argue. So I mean, as with all parties, fors and against, pros and cons.
Yeah, I mean, despite all of the problems that you highlight in terms of the councils that they're running, and despite of the various tactics that Labour and the left-wing elements of the media are employing, Reform UK would say that their dirty tricks tactics, personal attacks on Farage, that Reform is still receiving this increase in support in popularity. So is the tactics that especially Labour is pursuing and the Greens have joined in on this, this kind of Project Fear 2.0 is not really working, is it? Is it back to the drawing board when it comes to dealing with Reform? Daniel?
I wouldn't say it's back to the drawing board. I think it's about bringing something different to politics, and exactly that's what we're doing. Yes, I know Mathew will probably say, yeah, but we've won loads of by-elections. Yeah, but it's not always just about by-elections as well. It's about those council elections up next year. So that will be the pivotal point for everyone. And I think even if you like looking at the polling that came out from Find Out Now yesterday, Reform are actually down 3 in a month. So from the 12th of November, they're down 3 since then. So I don't think in terms of what we're currently witnessing, this kind of surge for Reform is continuous. Yes, they may have more members, but I don't think in terms of winning those seats across the country. Yes, they've won their first in Scotland, but we've got to see what happens in the Holyrood elections next year as well, because they'll be a critical part to this too. I think a polling came out only yesterday that the SNP will have a majority, the Conservatives will have 17 seats, and the Greens will have 17 seats in Scotland. So obviously polls are polls, they obviously change all the time. But I think if you kind of look at what's happening with Reform, I don't think they're really pulling in those elections greatly, because they should be winning every election, but they're not. So we'll have to see what happens. I think for the Greens and like the Conservatives and Labour are down 43 seats. this year alone. 43 since May elections. That's a huge amount for a government, and they shouldn't be in that position. They should be losing some, not huge amounts of them. And they're losing them by like 20, 30, 40% swings to other parties. So I think what we are kind of witnessing is a huge hammering to Labour. People are really, really angry with Labour because they said they were going to deliver and they've delivered nothing. Yes, they've got a new logo for GBR. Whoop-de-doo. It's about deliverables. Right. That was a really over-the-top whoop-de-doo, that was. But I think it is about deliverables, how things can change. They said they were going to bring change. What change have they really brought? I think we can all agree they haven't really brought much, and we're all kind of sick and tired of it.
Yeah, and Labour, and we it's easy to forget this, but Labour's like in its 17th, 18th month of its first, well, hopefully only term, and it's just extraordinary just how just how fast they've fallen. But we'll see whether Reform UK. I mean, I suppose it's very difficult to sustain growth in a linear fashion all the way through a parliament. So there will be periods of plateaus, but the question is will Reform have the next oomph, the next surge, and when will that take place, if at all? So we'll have to see about that. But we've got, let's turn to our final item. And Mathew's been looking at some of the end of year political interviews in the various political magazines, and he's come across a couple of interesting ones that he'd like to talk about. So I'll hand over to Mathew.
Yeah, I have to say I'm yet to see them in the actual magazines, but I've listened to podcasts about them, so I can't wait to read the actual full length interviews. But I heard the Spectator podcast talking about their big interview of the year, which is with Nigel Farage, and the New Statesman talking about their big interview, Christmas interview, end of year, which is with Wes Streeting. And I just thought that says something about our politics, that it's those two gentlemen, the right and the left are choosing to interview. Starting with Nigel Farage, it's interesting. I was listening to Tim Shipman talking about it on the Spectator podcast, and he was saying that Reform are in good heart. They know that they're having a moment. But he said something of interest which really caught my ear, which was that Nigel Farage still, however, kind of, I don't know if this is something he directly said, but he gives over the impression, the aura, that it could all come crashing down, as so many of his political projects have, that something could happen which people consider so beyond the pale that the whole thing just crumbles. And so, I think they famously talked about Keir Starmer and holding the Ming vase, right? Well, they said that has been passed to Nigel Farage, and Farage is having to try and carry that Ming vase. So I really thought that was interesting, that behind all of the bravado, that there might be some doubt actually that this can continue to happen, and that they can sweep to victory in 2029. So I thought that was really interesting. And then with Wes Streeting, well, I mean, what a wide-ranging interview that he's apparently given to the New Statesman, going far beyond his health brief. And why might he be talking about all these other things that are not actually his brief? Well, I wonder about that. And he apparently did this quote, didn't he, which has made headlines, making headlines all today, that is called "The government is just doing the maintenance," right? So and then he talked about, he didn't say our communication, but I think it's clearly that he's on about, Keir Starmer is technocratic, and that we're not selling what we've done. And so, they were saying on the New Statesman podcast that if you read between the lines, it's an attack on a very carefully worked, as I said on last week's pod, he's a canny politician, Wes Streeting. He'd never just come out and say these things. But it appears to be at least an attack on Keir Starmer, and indeed an attack on Morgan McSweeney, his chief of staff, as well. So, Wes Streeting might not be actively plotting in the sense of counting numbers, but do I think that he's on manoeuvres? Well, I just think it would be naive to think that he's anything other than that. So I just thought it was really interesting, Chris, that these are the two figures that the two big political magazines that are read by so many politicos have chosen to interview. That I think it says something about where our politics is at the moment.
Yeah, and these are these are two that have sort of personalities,
Right.
in complete sort of contrast to the Prime Minister. And it's also interesting that Streeting also had another popper at number 10 over the briefings and so forth. But it'll be interesting. I mean, we talked about Wes Streeting because you had your chance encounter with him. But it'll be interesting to see where Streeting goes from here. Any comment or reaction, Daniel?
So, well, I would say, where's Zach? That's what I want to know. Where was Zach in those pieces?
He's every
he should
blooming
be there.
where. That's where Zach is.
Good, tough, live with it. If you don't like it, never mind. So, yeah, it is interesting, but I think the new statement kind of interviewing kind of that politician. I'm not even going to give him a time of day, really.
I did last week.
Especially with what's going on. Did you? Why?
Have you not heard him, mate? Yeah. Oh, you need to catch up. I had a bit of an altercation with him. Yeah.
Did you? Oh, no, actually, no. Actually, memory has now rejigged myself. Yes, I do remember that. You kind of bounced on him. Well, that sounds really rude. That let's not even say that. Wow. Let's
move on.
You held him to account outside of his was it his office or parliamentary office or one of them?
Office.
Yes, his constituency office. Yes, I did see that, which I thought was quite interesting. Sometimes you do have to do that when politicians never listen. So maybe we would all be doing that. But I think that we've got to be careful because there's obviously security concerns around kind of being in outside an MP's parliamentary office. So, constituency office. So yeah, we've got to be conscious around that. But, however, I think it kind of then highlights around that if our MPs have to then if we have to go to our MP offices to kind of highlight an issue where they're not listening, then it kind of shows a case of that our democracy is kind of failing us. And I think there's a quote that I've seen recently that said that the world kind of needs to save itself for democracy as well. So I think there's a two kind of aspect around this, that if MPs aren't listening, then we need to stand up for ourselves and kind of fight as well. Not in a horrible way, but in a way for what we believe in.
Yeah.
Or we could just moan on a podcast. That's the other
we could do that. We could do that. Activism's more fun, I would say, as well. But so is podcasting like this.
Okay, right. Mathew, shall we make the announcement?
Yeah, I've been so excited about this. So, next Friday, next weekend, we record next Friday. Next weekend, right here on Political Frenemies, we're going to have our end of year Christmas special with not one, not two, not three, but 5 of us on the panel. So it will, of course, be me and Chris, because I've got to allow him to be there. I can't not. Me and Chris. Daniel making a second appearance in 2 weeks, so he shouldn't be moaning about not being on since October because he's blooming well on.
I'm going to.
Blooming on 2 consecutive weeks. And then also Mathew Goodwin Freeman, a Conservative councillor and commentator who is always box office, and my dear friend, Lib Dem activist and YouTuber Andy Chandler. So we will all be here next Friday reviewing the political year, talking about all the parties, probably looking forward a bit to next year as well, and maybe even eating a mince pie, Chris. Who knows?
Yeah, although you missed something out.
Oh, what?
Because remember, I call these specials the Christmas Snowflake Special. So this is the second annual Political Frenemies Christmas Snowflake Special. Yeah. So
yes, absolutely. So
I might wash my hair.
So really looking forward to that. Daniel, thanks so much to you. You've been superb as always. Can't wait to see you next week. Very excited about that. And I should just say, what I always say, which is do all the internet-y things. Like, subscribe, follow us on X at @PolFrenemies. Tell your friends. Thanks so much for all of you who tuned in last week. We actually got our best ever figures for a full-length video on YouTube. So really excited about that. And we've gone past 100 subs as well on YouTube. So, Progress can be a bit slow because it's such a crowded market, but we really are getting there, and we couldn't get there without all of you, our wonderful community. So thank you.
No, thank you, and thank you to Daniel as well. And
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, always, and yeah, we'll have you on next week, and yeah, I'm sure next year as we'll have you on
Really?
on a more regular basis than perhaps we've done.
He's getting at me again. Getting at me again.
Yeah.
The man can't help
Yes, we
himself.
are. No,
It's very easy to, it's very easy.
Yeah,
But,
it is.
but I hope you enjoyed it today. But do join us next week for our Christmas Snowflake special. But until then, it's goodbye from all three of us. Goodbye.